Hello, Safe Harbor Yogis. This is Jen. I'm glad to be with you here today. So, we're going to be focusing today on mindfulness and how that can really help us to stay in the present moment, of course, as its definition is, but also how to stay more present and what that could possibly do for us in the long run as far as benefits. So, we're going to have a few different options as far as poses go, depending on where you're seated. If some of you are on the ground, of course, I will be on the ground as well and instructing to that, but I will also give you alternatives throughout the class if you are in a chair. So, just to give a quick demo, if you haven't had a class with me before, as far as chairs go, I have my nifty, wonderful little chair over here. So we want to be as safe as possible with having a chair involved. So whenever I say to either lay back, relax, rest, we're going to have our backs against the back of the chair here. Okay, so that's going to be our relaxing pose. Our feet will be on the ground, our hip, right about hip width distance, and just either resting our arms here, resting our arms on an armrest, and just simply relaxing and going into that to that seat. Okay, so that would be your relaxation pose. Anytime I say that we're going to be moving a bit more, and I'll cue to this as well, it's just to sit forward a few inches to stay in that safety zone that, of course, we're not going to tip over by doing this, but you do want to make sure that you are a little bit away from the back of the chair so you're not relying on it. So you could rely on your own posture a little bit more. There will be things that I'll be saying, such as folding, which again, folding just simply means that we are going to bend. We are going to hinge at the waist. So as far as folding goes while we're in a chair, you can simply pull one of these and go down as far as is comfortable to you. If you can get down to your knees, you're good. Otherwise, you can let your head also hang heavy. You could let your arms hang down. If that's too much, feel free to bring arms or forearms onto legs and just give yourself as far down of a stretch as you can. So that's the option there for folding. Crossing an ankle over a knee, just as simple as that, would be right there. So when I mention that over there, that'll help get some of the hip stretch going while you are still seated even. So that's one option. Also, I will give options as far as straightening one leg goes. Sorry, my dog is on my mat. But straightening one leg would be simply doing exactly that, bringing the heel of that foot or bringing the sole of that foot down to the ground, whichever's most comfortable, and keeping the other leg bent with that foot on the ground. So we can extend over one leg and fold over that same leg too. So you're going to get that hamstring stretch. So all good stuff. So otherwise, near the end of our class, we'll do a little bit of work while standing up, and I'll give you instruction for chair with that too. All right, guys, let me move my dog. Come on, Bubba, get up. Come over here. All right. So we're going to get started here today in a relaxed pose, which will be laying down if we're on our mats. And we will be seated against the back of our chairs in our seats on the chair. So make your way to that perspective spot, please. Now, laying down may look different for each person as well if you are on the ground. You can let your legs go long, as I have mine right now. So your legs could be long and you can just be laying flat. Let your shoulders relax into the ground. Let the whole back of your body try to be challenged to touch the mat as well. Letting go of any tension. If this leg position doesn't suit you, feel free to bend at the knees and bring the soles of the feet to the ground. That's an option as well. And that does help to relax the lower back a little bit too. Or third option is you can bring the soles of your feet together and your knees wide. So almost like the butterfly position with our legs. So you can simply do that as well. And that will give you that hip stretch. So finding whichever version of your relaxed pose that works best for you. Now, as we get into this space, let's all close our eyes, tune out the outside world. And that means any thoughts that aren't serving us or aren't necessary at this moment, just letting them go. acknowledging them, saying, yes, I hear you, but letting it take an exit off of that highway for the time being. Let it go into a cloud above you and float away. Whichever imagery might potentially work for you, feel free to play with that as well to try to keep the mind clear, as that'll be really our goal for the next half hour or so together. So ultimately, if you haven't heard of mindfulness, it was discovered quite some time ago by a man named Jon Kabat-Zinn. He really brought this whole idea to life. Now, mindfulness is about being rooted, just like you'd think of a tree being rooted into the ground, being rooted into the present moment. So, how many times, even just in your own minds right now, answering this question with your eyes closed, how many times a day do you realize that you're dwelling in the past, that you're upset or anxious, that you feel some type of sadness or depression? That all has to do with being in the past or in the future. So what we want to do is find our minds and really just try to keep bypassing those extra thoughts that we don't need and simply being in the present moment. So thinking of it this way here, to be in the present moment, where are you right now? Are you feeling cold or warm? Are you thinking about anything other than what I'm talking about? So just giving yourself that little check-in that, ooh, that's definitely a good thing that I'm not utilizing, is what I'm getting to. Is that's the majority of students that I come across, is that they're thinking about what they did yesterday, they're thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow and 6 years from now, but they're not rooted in the present. So trying to find this present moment and be okay with it. So there are a few thoughts that I wanted to share as we are gearing up for class. And one of them is a definition of mindfulness by a man named James Baraz rather. He had said, mindfulness is simply being aware of what is happening right now without wishing it were different, enjoying the pleasant without holding on to it when it changes as it will, and being with the unpleasant without fearing it will always be this way, which it won't. So again, mindfulness is simply being aware of what is happening right now without wishing it were different, enjoying the pleasant without holding on when it changes, which it will, being with the unpleasant without fearing it will always be this way, which it won't. So letting that sink in for a moment, as this may be a new idea that you're hearing. And what I'd like you to focus on for class, because normally I'll have a mantra, something to go off of, a poem. Simply today, we're going to be going off of the idea of mindfulness and the idea of being present. So my challenge to all of you today is to just be here now, instead of thinking of the future, thinking of the past, just being in this present moment, not letting your mind take over and run the show. Let yourself be in control of it. So with that being said, wherever you're at with eyes still closed, make some teeny tiny movements. Wiggle the fingers, wiggle the toes, Maybe broadening that to moving the wrists and ankles, maybe to the arms and the legs. Just maybe giving yourself the moment to really get out any of those fidgets, that extra energy that might be in us that's telling us, I gotta move right now. Just doing whatever is in your body, because ultimately that is what yoga is. Yoga is not buying $300 pairs of yoga pants and just posting things on Instagram. Yoga is an ancient practice with so many facets to it. And ultimately, yoga is being present and doing so within your body, connecting breath and movement. So we're going to do exactly that. So I'd like you to try to keep focused on exactly what we're doing today. So if we're in a stretch and it's uncomfortable, your brain can say it's uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable, it's uncomfortable. But it's not going to say, dinner I had last night was great. So just thinking about whatever is happening in the present moment, keeping a positive mindset there as well. So even if something is uncomfortable, pushing yourself to breathe, to focus on that breath, that is where I want us to be. So focusing on the pose, focusing on the breath, focusing on the moment. Let's all keep our eyes closed or gaze low. And we're going to hug our left knee in toward our chest. Now you can do this if you are on the mat or in the chair. So simply being safe with it in the chair to not topple over, of course. But we're going to bring that left knee into our chest and then interlace our fingers around that shin or around the back of the left thigh, whichever is more accessible to you. So sorry if you hear Jasper breathing into my microphones. But holding on to this pose ultimately, we're going to keep our shoulders on our backs, meaning we're not going to slouch. We're going to keep our shoulders down away from our ears, flat on the ground or flat on the back of our chair. And feeling the moment here, where are you feeling the stretch? Do you feel uncomfortability? What does the air feel like around you? Starting by taking one breath synchronized here all together. Let's take a breath in through the nose and out through the nose. Breathing in and out. So you may have noticed as well in that breath, your belly rises, of course, as you breathe in, and your belly deflates as you breathe out. So we can let ourselves within the pose find that too. So as we're in this space, in this shape, as we inhale, our belly rises, that knee can move slightly away from our body. When we exhale, using that breath, let it sink back in, maybe even a tiny centimeter deeper than before. So using that breath. And from here, we're going to do a little rock and roll up to seated. So you can keep your hand behind the back of your thighs, or hands, I should say, behind the back of your thigh. And we're just going to simply do a little roll up if you can, just to come into seated. You can just do that and get that strength and momentum going, or of course, use your hands to press yourself to a seat. Those of you in your chairs, stay where you're at. All you have to do is go ahead and extend that right leg long if you're in your chair. Also, if you're on your mat, we're doing that same thing. So all together here. So right leg's long, left knee's bent. Okay. Now, those of you in chairs are going to stay exactly as this is. Those of you on mats, follow me further into this pose on the ground. We're just going to go ahead and hop this left foot to the outside of our right knee. So just go ahead and you can even pick it up, set it over there. So we're giving ourselves that ability to twist, and also you'll feel that stretch all the way into your hip, all the way up to that knee on that outer left thigh. Those of you in chairs, feel free to use the arms on your chair. We're going to twist over toward the left side of the room. So ultimately keeping that shape with the bottom half of your body and then just simply twisting at the torso. Those of us on the ground, we're going to take an arm, our right arm, we're going to hug on to this left thigh. We're going to bring our left fingers behind us. So left fingers are behind us, and we're going to sit nice and tall. So sit super tall, grow from your seat all the way up through the top of your head. Take a deep breath in wherever you're at. If you're in your chair or on the ground, inhale here, please. Exhale and twist over toward the left. So if you were already there, maybe finding an extra little bit of space to move further. We're using the hugging onto this left leg with our right arm as a counterbalance. So we're allowing ourselves to hug that whole side of our body in, use it as leverage to sit tall and to ultimately twist. So if you didn't already bring your gaze over to the left, try doing that. And if you want to go even further, maybe trying to bring that gaze over that back shoulder if that's in your body. Taking one more breath in this twist wherever we are. Go ahead and unwind yourself, everyone. Bring yourself back to the middle. We're going to uncross that foot from over top of that right knee. So you can move yourself back to that untwisted position. Those of you in chairs, feel free to just bring the soles of your feet back to the ground. The rest of us will lay back down again. You can put both legs long for the moment just to get yourself situated back on your mat. And then we're going to hug our right knee into our chest. So same rules apply, just the opposite side here. So keep those shoulders on the ground. Keep your eyes closed or your gaze low. Check in if your mind has wandered and bring it back to this moment. And again, riding that wave of breath. So we're going to find a pattern to our breath now. So in yoga, there are two things. Pattern of breath is big. That's called pranayama or breath work. And there's also the type of breath in yoga, which is called Ujjayi breath. And Ujjayi breath is breathing in and out through the nose while constricting the throat. So almost thinking about that closed mouth type of sigh that many of us have probably done in our lifetime. So as you inhale, you'll kind of make that almost humming, sighing breath with your mouth closed. So inhaling in, which should sound like this. So I'm constricting the throat, and exhaling is the same thing. So as we exhale through the nose, making it very breathy, very almost whispery. It's also known as ocean breath or Darth Vader breath. So feel free to use any of those mental images. Now we're going to come up and out of this pose here back to that seated position. So those of you on the ground, if you want to use your arms to get up, feel free to do so. Otherwise, give yourself a little momentum and rock yourself up to seated. So those of you in chairs, simply stay as you are and extend your left leg long with your right knee bent. Those of you on the ground with me, we're going to step that right foot rather. Yes, right foot over our left leg. Sorry about that. It's early in the morning. So bringing our right foot over our left leg out to that outside part, as you can see where I'm at. We're going to twist over to the right. So let's prep onto that. Let's grab our left arm, wrap it around our right knee, and bring the fingertips of the right hand behind us. Sit nice and tall. Take an inhale here. Let your exhale deepen that twist, looking over toward the right, or maybe back over that right shoulder right away now that we know where we're going. So finding that stretch, feeling exactly what you feel in this moment. If you feel tightness, if you can feel that breath that you're creating, if you're following that Ujjayi breath with me in through the nose and out through the nose, how does that feel? Let's unwind, bring ourselves back out of that twist. Release that right foot from over top of the left leg. And same with everyone on the chairs as well. Feel free to simply sit normally. Those of you who are on the mats with me, we're going to bend into the left knee as well, just to bring both knees in. We're going to cross at the ankles, and we're just going to roll on to all fours. Okay? So I'm going to go sideways for this one for us. Those of you in chairs can do the same thing seated. So that's the cool part about this particular pose, is it can be done either way. So we're going to work on cat and cow pose, which is ultimately kind of playing around with our spine. So our spine, of course, moves in both directions, but it doesn't ultimately do back bends too often. And it's not that this will be a back bend, but it'll get the mobility of the spine going in that direction for the lessening of injury, for the ability to have full range of mobility in the body, and to just develop that stretch. So when we inhale, obviously our belly will drop, it'll expand. And then when we exhale, our belly deflates. So same concept. So as we inhale, let's think about dropping the belly down toward the earth. And as we exhale, we're going to draw our belly button in toward our spine and bring our spine up toward the sky. So taking that next inhale here, once you get to your exhale, we're going to drop our head in between our arms. Those of you in chairs can simply do the same type of movement, moving the spine by sitting a little bit away from the back of the chair and bringing chin to chest and just rounding through that way with your spine. Your hands can be on your lap to do so. So holding this cat pose for a moment. So we're rounding the spine. Our belly button's coming in toward our spine. If you're on the ground, we're tucking our tailbone under, and we're creating as much space under this overpass. We're kind of creating this bridge. As we inhale, let the belly drop, let the tailbone lift. Those of you in chairs can simply bring your gaze up toward the sky and find a little mini back bend out of it. And then come into that exhale, belly button comes into our spine, our head drops toward the ground, we press through our arms, we tuck our tailbone, so we round the spine. And then on our inhale, drop the belly, gaze comes up, press into the arms, arch the spine, tailbone rises. And again, just arching if you're in your chair. So exhaling into our cat and rounding our spine, and inhaling into our cow to arch our spine. So go through with this for about 2 more rounds. So again, inhaling to round, exhaling to arch. And then coming back to neutral when you have done your last 2 or so of those poses. And from where we are at on our mat, we're going to come into what's called child's pose. Now, child's pose is a resting pose. So those of you who are in chairs and you had sat forward, feel free to sit back with your back against the chair once more. Those of you on the mat with me, we're just going to bring our big toes to touch behind us. We're going to sit our tailbone back toward our heels with the tops of our feet on the ground. And you can see right now I haven't really surrendered into the pose just yet. I still have that strength in my arms lifting my head. But what we can ultimately do here is just simply bring our forehead down to the ground. Also, if the forehead, or the ground, I should say, is too far away from the forehead, feel free to just go ahead and bend at the elbows and stack your forearms and bring your forehead down to there. So we're curling up into this little ball, so to speak. And if you want some more space to be able to get into the hips here, you can feel free to just put some pressure back into the hands and just scoot the knees that they're mat width distance. So you have the knees apart and you can kind of move into that space a little bit more. So finding whichever version is most comfortable for you. And once again, closing the eyes. Take a deep breath in, deep breath out. So as we take those breaths, coming back inward, It may sound repetitive, but come back to this moment, just having that reminder. And one other thought to share as we're about a little more than halfway into our class. There's no name to this particular quote, but I really do enjoy it. It said, focus on the step in front of you, not the whole staircase. So letting that also kind of permeate your mind here, that we don't need to do everything all the time, all at once. So anything that may be overwhelming in your environment right now, anything that may be going on in your own mind, in your own life, just knowing that it's good to have goals. That's necessary to have goals. Never give up on that part. But ultimately, just focusing on the small steps you can take toward that goal instead of being a full-fledged millionaire in 2 minutes. So knowing where your focus can be, that will be most helpful, which again is the present moment. So coming back into our bodies here after thinking of that, and also coming back to the focus on our breath. So as we're in our child's pose here, we're going to take a few quick breaths together. And I want your focus, as you can't really see anything because your eyes are closed or your gaze is at the floor, or whatever the case may be, that your gaze is low to the ground, but you're not really focusing on everything around you. You're just focusing on one object or your closed eyes. We're going to put a count to our breath here for these next 5 breaths. So what we're going to do is inhale through the nose, first the count of 3. We're going to hold that breath for a count of 3. And we're going to exhale out the mouth for a count of 5. So ultimately bringing our heart rate back down, coming into this relaxed place. Let's take an inhale in through the nose to start. Inhale in 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Exhale it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Exhale through the mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale for 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. And then exhale through the mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 2 more. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Exhale it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more breath. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Exhale it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excellent job, everyone. You can keep that same count going in your mind if you wish, or simply just focus on your inhales and exhales and how they feel in general. So coming back out of our child's pose here in just a moment, coming back out of this resting pose. Those of you in chairs can simply gently blink the eyes open. Those of you on your mat, we're going to go ahead and come up to a seated position. So come back onto all fours. So placing the hands down, come back onto all fours. And then we're just going to simply bring ourselves back to our seat. So however gracefully you can get there, feel free to do so. So coming to a seat on our mat. Getting a little bit into some folding, into some exercises in stretching the back here a little bit. We're going to bring the soles of our feet together. Knees are going to be nice and wide, those same type of butterfly legs like I mentioned at the beginning. If having the heels in close to the body is too tight or too too much tension on the legs, feel free to bring your heels away from your body a little bit more. You'll still get that same stretch, but it's a little less intense. So feel free to do that. And if bringing the soles of your feet, for my yogis on our mats here, if bringing the soles of your feet is not available together, feel free to just sit any way that's comfortable. In yoga, that's called easy pose. So whatever way with your legs crossed, if that's crisscross applesauce or whatever you'd like to sit in, feel free to get there. Those of you in your chairs, I just advise to sit a little forward from the back of the chair, please. Use your posture and have your feet planted firmly on the ground, just about as wide as your hips are. All right, so coming into whichever version of those options you chose, we're going to take some slight rocks left to right and just move anything fleshy away from underneath of us, just so we're sitting right onto our bones, so we can feel that. Because ultimately that's our guiding part of this pose, is to stay balanced on that. You can have your hands resting in your lap. You can have your hands by your sides. Those of you in chairs, again, maybe having them either hanging down or on armrests is good too. So play around with that. You're more than welcome. And we're going to sit nice and tall. So feel that puppeteer pulling those strings upward on the top of your head here. Now we're going to fold forward. Now what I want us to do is I want us to walk our way there with our hands. So those of you on the ground, this will work for swimmingly. Those of you in chairs, you're just going to have to kind of hinge slowly. So we're going to hinge from the waist, so right where that hip creases, so where we know where our body bends as we do anything that's bending forward. So just checking to make sure that my camera is not rolling, because I've had issues with that. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So coming back into this particular pose. So we're going to hinge right at the waist. So that's where that crease is. So we're only going to be moving the upper half of our body. The bottom half of our body is going to stay at the same exact spot it's at right now. So those of you in chairs, what you're going to do is hinge forward. So simply, again, being safe on the spot you're at in your chair, that you're not going to topple, but simply just folding forward. So just going down toward those legs. You can let your arms hang down and head hang down. And those of you who are on the mats with me, let's take an inhale in here. Exhale and take those fingertips out right in front of where your toes are. Take some little steps with your fingertips toward the front of your mat. And get down as much as is comfortable and stay there. You don't have to go any further into the pose than is necessary. So that's the nice part of yoga, again, paying attention and catering to our own body's needs. So finding where your limit is. If your limit is just folding a little bit here, feel free to stay right there and use that strength in your arms to help be a guide so you don't go too far. If as you breathe, as you're still doing maybe those counted breaths, as I'll give us some silence for a few moments, feel free to let yourself sink into the pose more on your exhales, maybe slightly rising out on those inhales. And then maybe even coming more deeply into the pose and coming down to forearms or wherever you can get to at this moment. Again, never forcing, just listening to your body. I am simply the guide. So maybe finding that breath of inhaling on 3, holding for 3, and exhaling on 5. If that does not suit you, stay in the present moment by just paying attention to what your inhales and exhales feel like. Pay attention to any sensations in the body that are from the pose. And letting any other thoughts that aren't of this go. Take 2 more breaths wherever you are at. Those of you in chairs, you can feel free to bring your hands to your knees to help bring yourself up to a seat. Those of you who are on the ground, simply get out the way you got in and walk those fingertips back toward your bodies. Excellent. So now that we are in this seated position once more, we're going to come into some individual leg stretching here. So very similar to how we did those twists in the chair before, we're just going to simply fold forward like we did just now, but over a straight leg. So those of you on the ground, so we can mirror this here as to what they're doing in chairs as well, we're going to extend our left leg long. Those of you in chairs do the same thing. So left leg goes long, and the right knee is still bent. If you're on the ground, the sole of your right foot is to the inner part of your left thigh. Okay, so we're keeping half of that shape with that butterfly type of leg if we're on the ground. Those of you who are in your chairs, feel free to just bring the sole of the right foot to the ground with that knee bent. Okay, and we're going to fold forward over this left leg. So what I'd like us to do first is keep our leg engaged. Pay attention to what we're doing in this moment, in this stretch. So we're going to flex our toes back toward our face. So almost pretending that there's a wall right at the sole of our foot and we're trying to stand on it. So finding that, once again, take a few little rocks side to side here. Move out any fleshy parts that may be in the way of our stretching. And then wherever we're at, chair or no chair, bring your arms up high over top of your head. Bring your palms to touch one another. And then on your next exhale, we're going to fold forward. You also have the option of bringing those hands down. I would advise to possibly do so in this stretch. Bring your hands to either side of that leg and just simply walk those fingertips forward until you know you're at your edge. Those of you who are in chairs and folding over that left leg, again, do so safely, please, but you can feel free to walk your fingertips down your leg that way. So coming into this stretch, I want us to have the most enjoyable experience out of the pose here. So what we can do is we'll take 2 breaths in together with that count. So inhaling for 1, 2, 3, holding 1, 2, 3, exhaling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more. Inhale 1, 2, 3. Hold it 1, 2, 3. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Slowly walk those hands back up toward your body. Come up to seated. Switching sides. Extend the right leg long. Go ahead and bring the sole of the left foot to the inner right thigh if you're on the ground. Flexing our right toes back toward our face, so we're standing on the wall in front of us. Those of you in chairs, sole of the left foot's on the ground and knee is bent at that 90-degree angle, and we're extending our right leg forward in front of us. So use our fingertips as that guide. Let's get down into it. So walk yourself forward, hinge at the waist. Coming into the stretch, closing the eyes once you get there, finding one point of focus, breathing again together. In for 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Exhale it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. 1, 2, 3. Exhale it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Walk those hands back up toward your body, please. Come up to that seated position. Doing one quick standing move before we end our class here and come into our final part of meditation, our Shavasana, at the end of our class. So feel free, however you need to get up to a standing position if you're on the ground or if you're in a chair. So those of you who are sitting in chairs, you can use your chair as a prop for this one. We're going to do what's called tree pose. So we're going to root ourselves into the ground just like we did when we were seated. Sorry for the rolling noise. So ultimately, you can balance against a wall if you don't have a chair. So feel free to go near a wall if you want one side for stability. But ultimately, you can use your chair too. And again, use it safely. It may tip. So just my little public service announcement. We're going to root into our right foot first. Okay. So coming into that right foot, we're going to unweight some weight from our left. Okay. So unweight some weight, bring that weight into that right foot. Now you have a few options. You can make a little kickstand with your toes to the ground as we bend into that left knee and open up that hip. So we're opening up toward the front of the room here. So our knees trying to come over toward the back of the room or toward the left side. If you want to bring this a little bit further, you can use your hand as a guide. Bring the sole of that left foot into the inner right thigh. So we don't want to bow into the hip, and bowing into the hip is what I'm doing right now purposefully, but we want to kind of tuck that hip under. There we go. And again, using that hand as a guide and also finding a point in the room somewhere in front of you that is not moving that you can stare at. Keeping your focus there and only there. Holding it for one more round of breath. And without slingshotting that leg down, we're going to simply release it gently. Use your hand to do so if you need. Go ahead and put the left foot down. Roll out that right ankle. Give it some relief. If you need to switch angles or move the chair to a different side or turn around if you're at a wall, feel free to do so. But we're going to do the same thing opposite side. So put your weight into your left foot this time, please. And you can come into this little kickstand, opening up that knee toward the right side here, keeping a little bend in the left knee as well. And you can stay here if this is your edge, or go ahead and grab onto that ankle, bring it into the inner left thigh for that foot. Use your chair for stability. Try not to, sorry, my pants are a little slippery. If you have that same issue, feel free to keep holding that foot. But from where we're at here, we're simply not bowing into that hip, so don't go ahead and pop it out to the side, but we're simply keeping it tucked under and neutral. So breathing here for one more round of breath. And then releasing that pose, you release it from your hand. Go ahead and put weight back into the right foot and roll out that left ankle. Great job, everyone. And now we're just going to come back down to our mats or to our seats. So those of you who are in chairs, feel free to sit back down and bring your back to the back of your chair. Those of you who are on your mat, just please follow me and get back down to your seat however you'd like. To do so, you can simply, without using the hands even, bend at the knees and then bring hands down to the ground once you get there and help yourself gently lower. Whichever version of getting down to the ground is best for you, feel free to do so. There's really not a rule in regards to it. So we're going to find our way into our relaxation pose, or what's known as Shavasana in yoga. So we can extend those legs long, just like we had at the beginning. If you want to kind of play around with some of those stretches that we tried, now that we've already stretched them a little bit, they may be more accessible. So you could feel free to bend at the knees and simply let the lower back relax into the mat and bring your feet about hip width distance, knees hip width distance. You could bring your feet as wide as the mat, as I'm doing now, and simply bringing the knees to bump into the middle together. Or you can do the opposite of that and bring the soles of the feet together with the knees wide in that butterfly leg pose. So finding where you want to be for these last few moments. And to close our eyes, let's take a deep breath in together, and on our exhale, close them. Take an inhale. Exhale, close the eyes gently. Let any tension, let any extra thoughts, let anything that's not serving you go for these next few moments as we rest. And as we're here, without using your voice, without moving your mouth, without moving at all, just coming into this moment once more together. So not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, Just thinking about this moment and only this moment, where your only responsibility is to simply lay here, simply sit here, relax, let go of stress. Find this in your own bodies as it is always there, and help to foster that practice so you can bring this theory out into the real world here as well. That we don't need to be overwhelmed with our past or our future. All we have to do is simply be here now. So coming back into your natural breath, no longer controlling it, just simply paying attention to it. And from here, bring yourselves back into the room if we've wandered a little bit, back into our own bodies, into our own minds, into our own space. Make those tiny movements again by wiggling the fingers and toes. Maybe bringing your arms up overhead high and coming into a full body stretch, creating the longest U that you could create. And those of you in chairs, stay just as you are, please. Those of you who are on the ground, just simply release your right arm over by your right ear. And we're just going to roll onto our right side, using that right arm as a pillow. Coming into the fetal position here, the position of new beginnings, of fresh starts. And just showing thanks that we get to do that every single day. Use the strength in your arms to bring yourself up to a seat when you're ready. So everyone meeting in this seated position, whatever that seated position may look like to you. And again, I just want to end with those words once more, to focus on the step in front of you and not the whole staircase. Taking one last breath together, take an inhale here. Exhale it out. And as always, I'll end the class with the word that means the light in me sees and honors the light in you, and that we are all one. Let's bring our arms high and out by our sides. Let your palms touch over top of your head. Bring your palms down to your chest, to your heart center. Bring your knuckles right into your sternum. The center of gratitude, the center of love, of acceptance. Thank you all for practicing with me. Now saying in your own mind or saying out loud, Namaste. Thank you very, very much, everyone, for practicing with me today. If you should have any questions, as always, feel free to let Sarah know. She will get in touch with me with those, and I will gladly provide any answers. If anything is unclear. Otherwise, I thank you all so very much for practicing with me today. I'll see you again next week.